Hello and welcome to episode 13 of Confidently Wrong. I'm Wesley Nakamura. This is Mike Smith, Brian Redondo, and Savon Jones, aka Captain Vonnie.
Bringing that energy.
So
Hey.
for everybody listening, this is the second time we just recorded this intro. So if you haven't
we had a
already,
little
if
false
it's
start.
not clear that we're committed to bringing you high quality podcasts every other week, then that should make it clear.
On today's show, we're going to talk about WandaVision and Harley Quinn, the animated series on HBO or HBO Max. So we start in the same place as always. The what you're loving this week. Savon, lead us off.
Cool, bet. So this is what I'm loving right now. It's a little specific, but it has truly brought me joy. I've had like older games that I've wanted to play, but I'm not about to sit and look up and like find an old game from 20 years ago or whatever and play it. This is not what's happening for me. And I ended up stumbling across this YouTube channel that I guess people just take all the cutscenes and they like pretty much play through the story, but you can watch the whole game story. And so I found something like that for Grand Theft Auto 4, which was like one of my favorite games in high school. I think it has the best story of any GTA, period. The writing is top notch. It's one of those things I appreciate more as an adult. It came out in 2008, so I was a teenager, freshman in high school, basically. And I'm just...
Is that Liberty City?
Liberty City, it was fire. And that's what you play as, I think the Serbian hitman immigrant Nico, but the video is like 4.5 hours long, but it like plays the game super efficiently. You get to appreciate the story, and it's like watching a dope movie, and I'm just having a good time, just kind of putting it on, watching it chunks at a time, kind of getting to relive an old game that I don't have the time or patience to like sit and actually play through.
So
Is there scaffolding, though? That's the important question.
wow, good callback, Wes. A question for you is, because I think with all the cyberpunk, nonsense that a lot of people have been talking about, like good open worlds,
Wah, wah.
and I think, and I'm not as much of a GTA aficionado as you are. I'm not a GTA aficionado at all. Do you feel like 5? There was anything that was better in 4? Like, was there anything that was a step down? Because I think sometimes when people were talking about like perfect open worlds, they brought up 4 and not necessarily 5.
4 is a much more mature and serious story because it's about like the American dream and moving on and revenge and hate. And there's like parodies, but it's a very serious, like the game is a very serious game. It's very dark and it's humor, but it's all very it's a very serious adult story. GTA 5 is a more fun game to play and there's more things to do. But the story isn't as like gritty and impactful. And there's still some good story moments in 5, but 4 will legit have you invested in characters and really be sad when someone dies. And there's a lot of like friendships that develop. 5 doesn't really have that, even though 5 is an objectively more fun game to play. Like I'll still play 5 over 4 because it's just more fun.
But yeah, it's also like more updated. Yeah, I was just curious because it was like I remember that game just being like the shit. And like you said, we were in freshmen. I think these two guys were already married and like grown as adults when it came out. But I remember we
We already had our 401ks and Roth
I
IRA
already
set up.
died and reincarnated.
yeah, Brian's actually like 250 years old. I remember vividly for that game, like sitting in class freshman year and just being so excited to go home and play it, and like the whole world was like shook. Because the one before that was what? That was the first like next gen quote unquote one, I guess.
Yeah, San Andreas was still PS2.
Yeah. Anyway.
Oh my.
So yeah, really dope. I'm sure they have these for other games that I might do as well that I'm just not gonna look up and find copies of and play.
They definitely do. I've watched one of these YouTube videos for the first Last of Us after playing the sequel, and I wanted to be reminded of the story. And watching some of these YouTube videos and just getting like straight to the good stuff is pretty surprisingly entertaining.
I've seen people try to do that with like Metal Gear Solid games, except the YouTube videos are like 30 hours long or some shit.
Yeah, Metal Gear is like part movie, part game to begin with, so
It's mostly just movie.
yeah, it's the best movie I've ever played. That's Metal Gear Solid 4 in a nutshell.
Brian, what are you loving this week?
So it's actually something that I'm not loving at the moment, but I did
I'm
love
so
at some
excited.
point.
Oh my.
I thought you were gonna hate on something.
So we're we're nearing the 1 year mark of pandemic quarantine, and I feel like we've exhausted a lot of our TV viewing options, or at least I feel that way. And so I'm like done with all the prestige television that I, usually the only things that I watch, right? Like the Better Call Sauls out there. And so now I'm just cycling through whatever crap else I can just put on every single day. So right now I've just been watching Cobra Kai, which I enjoy, but I don't love. So I wanted to actually talk about something I watched a few weeks ago, which is the Netflix show Lupin, which for those that don't know, it's this French kind of like heistish thief thriller. There's only 5 episodes at the moment, half a season's worth, but it's like a super cool character. This guy models himself after a fictional master thief character who's very popular in French literature, apparently, sort of like their answer to Sherlock Holmes, except a bad guy, a master thief, a villain. And so this character in the French show, who's like a Senegalese son of an immigrant French dude, models all his thievery after this fictional character, and does a lot of really cool thief stuff. So it's very like a little bit of Ocean's 11, a little bit of Sherlock Holmes, that kind of style. It's in French, so it's kind of like fun watching French people be French, whatever that might mean to you. And it's just a really fun show. And the main actor, Omar Sy, or I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name right, but he's like a really engaging protagonist, like really solid actor, and anchors the entire show. And I can't wait till they release the second half of the first season. Ended on a huge cliffhanger, so definitely worth checking out.
All right. Is there a nameless Chinese acrobat involved? Just kidding.
What?
That's an Ocean's 11 reference.
Oh my god!
Come on, Mike.
Remember, you were like, Wesley, you're being racist. I was like, I don't know his name. Nobody knows his name. He didn't have a name in the show, basically.
Facts.
Anyways, Mike, what are you loving this week?
All right.
While you're scarfing
So-
down your banana or whatever.
Yeah, no, it's actually some kind of, I don't know, scallion cake or something. All right.
Scallion cake. Okay.
Okay,
All
bro.
right.
One thing I've really been loving lately is on Instagram, there's like they put in a feature called Reels. It's essentially just like attempting to be TikTok, and I am hooked to these damn things. Like, it's so easy to just scroll, like, and I'm too proud to download TikTok. Like, I only have my data be stolen and used by American companies, so I can never actually download TikTok. But people just put their TikToks on Instagram and these Reels. And like one of the trends in these things is like someone will post like a prompt video, and then people will like reply to that. So like one of them is like, what's your favorite interview? And then like people will like play that in the beginning of their video, and then they'll answer it. One of them was, what is a time when you met a celebrity and didn't know it? And that made me think of literally my favorite story. And I said this before we started. I'm not just throwing in a story here because I want to tell it. I genuinely love this story. And the person it's about, Savan, is actively dying right now, and I haven't even told the story yet.
Oh god.
So here is the story. This is my version of it. I've told it so many times it might be not actually factual. I'm pretty sure it is, and I'm hitting the core points. So a few years ago, Solange Knowles, Beyonce's, I think, younger sister, lived in New Orleans, and she's an accomplished musician in her own right. She's a really dope person. She would have like a lot of parties at bars and things like that, a lot of kind of events. So one time, Savan went to one of these events. So he's there having a good time. He's got his drink on. He's probably got a bag of hot chips in his pocket. Like he's just really living his best life.
Is that in the front pocket or the back?
zaps.
Oh, he
Jacket
like,
pocket.
jacket pocket. And this is another story I'll tell y'all another time that I just heard from our dear friend of the show, Tyler.
Sixth listener.
So one time Savan's at one of these Solange parties, and all of a sudden, like, security guard guys start coming through, things like I'm saying, like, okay, y'all got to decide if you're staying or leaving. You're not going to be able to leave for a little bit. So Savan's like, I'm having a good time. I got my drink. I got my hot chips. I got my friends. Like, I'm vibing. Like, where else am I going to go? Savan is a jovial dude, you know. Lots of people want to talk to Savan, and Savan wants to talk to a lot of people, especially when he's out and about, you know. He's just kind of out doing his own thing. And he's agreeing, like, for folks that can't see him right now, he's cheesing so hard, like he's clearly agreeing with everything I'm saying, and he's trying to not laugh right now. But anyway, so Savan strikes up a conversation with a young woman, and they're just talking, you know, and Savan just, you know, asking a lot of the questions, like, oh, what do you do? She said, oh, well, I'm a musician. And he's like, oh, that's great. Who do you sing for? You know, you'll meet tons of bands in New Orleans. Like pretty much every other person's in a band. She said Columbia, which Savan assumed was just some
Like the country?
No, just
Like the band.
Oh, you'll find out. So
Oh, the
It's like-
label.
it's-
Like the band,
Like-
yeah,
like
the
Chicago,
mega
Columbia.
music
Yeah,
label.
in your mind, you thought Columbia might just be the band.
yeah,
name
some
or
band
something.
in New Orleans,
Asia.
probably some like generic
No,
soul
the
funk
label.
band. Like it's got a couple Loyola students in it. You know, it's just kind of doing its thing. Conversation, you know, ran its course. Savan's about to go bounce around, keep mingling. He says, "Okay, well, good luck with your music." And she said, "Thank you." Savan walked over to his friends, who are at this point in absolute shock, and are like, he's essentially like, well, what's the deal? And he's like, how are you talking to her? And he was like, what? They were like, that was Beyonce. And Savan's only reaction was, oh, she's shorter than I expected. So that's the
What?
story of the time Savan met
What?
one of the most iconic just people on the planet and told her good luck with your music.
Do it, Wes.
So
Do it quick.
All right, real quick. A couple shows ago, about a month ago, Brian recommended the show Warrior, which is streaming on HBO Max right now. If you're following us on Instagram, I've been occasionally putting up stuff about it. I watched it on Brian's recommendation. It was
Hell yeah.
fantastic. I watched
Hell
both
yeah.
seasons together. It's 10 episodes each. Holy cow. I did not expect to like it as much as I did. I think that's just the big takeaway for me was how interesting like the stories were, how visually like great the fights were. You could actually understand what was happening. Everybody had a different fighting style, which was cool. The plot wasn't necessarily, it wasn't like like, oh, it's just about fighting and the plot was bad or anything like that, or it was too cheesy. It was actually like there were some heartfelt moments and good story development and character development that really happened there. The thing that I wanted to just point out quickly for me was like, as someone who's Asian or Asian American, being able to watch the show and see some of the things that they were doing that aren't very common in television for Asian American actors was really cool. So, having characters who had a vast number of like priorities, personalities, character traits was really cool just to see that like diversity built in as a sort of a nod to like the idea that Asian Americans aren't a monolith, was really cool. And then the things they did with language were like really dope, and like they didn't become the focal point of the show, which was cool. It was just sort of like, oh, if you caught it, you caught it, and if you didn't, you didn't, and it was okay. It didn't affect your understanding of the show, but I think it added a layer of they understand certain aspects of Asian American life. So one of the things they do in the first episode was they have some of the actors speaking some dialect of Chinese. It's probably Cantonese. And then they did a 360 camera shot around that character, or a 180. And as they flipped it, everybody started speaking American English. And then, so what they're implying, right, is that they're speaking Chinese, but like in order for them to be more relatable characters, they end up speaking American English to show like how American actually this story is, right, and how American these characters are. And I just thought like their use of language and the way that they changed it subtly throughout the show was really important to the telling of the story without it being overly heavy-handed in terms of like what point they were trying to make about it.
And all the white characters, or a lot of the white characters, have heavy Irish accents. So they're the accented ones. Aha.
Yeah, so they do a lot of stuff like that. And the Asian actors are actually asked to speak like almost basically like 3 versions of language. So a lot of them will speak Cantonese at certain points. They will speak English as like Americans, so like a modern day English. and then they will also speak in accented English when they're speaking with the white characters in English. So it's like there's like 3 different ways, and so to be an actor that's able to pull all 3 of those things off is like it's probably not easy. I mean, I'd imagine as someone who is awful at accents and language. So just like the skill that they had to show to be able to do all 3 of those things well was also really cool.
A few
So
things.
is it-
No.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
So is it like a creative choice? Sorry.
No. You go. We're killing it today.
Is it is it a creative choice, or is it like intentional code switching, or is it both?
No, it's a creative choice. So when they're
I think it's
speaking
both.
in Chinese to each other, they actually just speak in regular American English. When they are speaking English to the white characters, they'll all speak with an accent, as if it's like a real life conversation where a person who spoke Chinese as their first language is speaking accented English. And then the last version is they'll speak in Cantonese when they're speaking to each other, and and your viewpoint is from a white character's perspective.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's sick. All right. So
Yeah.
they could make it intentionally vague if it's from the POV of a white character to convey that they don't know what the hell is going on.
Exactly.
But the private Cantonese is like purely just for the convenience of the audience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh,
But,
that's
it's
but
bringing
it's not just
inside
convenience
the
of
dialogue.
audience, it's to show, like, because they could have easily just done real Cantonese and then subtitled it, right? So you could understand
Oh.
what's happening. But they're choosing to make it very clear that, like, this is an American story, an American, like, they're saying, like through the show, they're saying that these people are, like, they're fully American in, like, how they're
Oh.
acting, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. To
Yeah.
kind of emphasize what aspects of like the culture they're leaning towards almost.
Right. Well,
Yeah,
it's,
so like one
yeah.
of the characters is born in America but grew up in Chinatown and technically is speaking Cantonese like the whole time, but his dialogue is all in modern day American English. When as a viewer, when you see him talk with other
Ooh,
Chinese characters,
that's tough.
I have
Yeah.
2 thoughts and a question.
okay.
The first thought is my favorite recurring theme on this show is Wes saying he'll keep something short and it turns into like a literal essay. So don't say we're not consistent. Secondly, this must be like this and Harley Quinn are like the worst marketed shows I've outside of like you guys. I've literally never heard of the show. Never heard of it, seen an Instagram reel about it. I have no idea this show exists, and it's maybe that's a product of me just missing it, but
I don't think it's a product of you missing it or being white. I think you're right. Like, we didn't hear about
who
it.
said
like, me
anything
and Brian
about
haven't
being
seen it.
white?
Hey,
Well, I mean, you are plugged into all the Asian American channels, so
Is it
my
marketed
bad. I'll
through
take
those
it back.
channels? Like, do you
No, that's
feel
what I'm
It is
saying. Is it
not.
wasn't through those either. It's like
yeah.
it was. That's why I'm saying it's not a product of you being white.
Okay, fair enough.
the only reason why I started watching this show was because, as I said earlier, I'm just looking for crap to watch, and it happened to be on HBO Max, and the description says based on the ratings of Bruce Lee. So I was like, huh, and that's why I watched it.
Is my question?
And it's already a canceled show.
Oh, for real?
right? Like,
Oh, how do
it's
you not
2
leave
seasons
it? And
and done.
does it
So
end?
I'm hoping that like it's gonna get more publicity now that it's on
And then
HBO
it'll
Max,
come
because
back
originally it
and
was on
it'll be a whole
Cinemax,
thing.
which is
Oh,
kind of like I guess where shows go to die.
F.
And but hopefully now it'll be revived.
Is it an American-made show?
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. I think the showrunner,
but the showrunner is
made
Chinese.
another show. No, I think he's actually a white guy.
Yeah,
From
he's
the
known
States.
for action movies or like shows, I guess. Chopper.
Uh,
All right, so Warrior will sponsor us, and then Comfy will sponsor us because we're just giving
There's a-
them free ad space.
Yo, comfy.com. Hit it up, guys.
Warriors season
Um,
We're
3.
gonna get like a cease and desist. Yeah, and Warriors.
the show. Oh, there's like a mini campaign to try and get a 3rd season somewhere. So there, I mean, it's not like anything like that's super organized, but a lot of the actors, I was like interested, like, oh, should I find them on Instagram or whatever? And a lot of them have posted like, spread the word. Let's get Warrior season 3, something like that. So
Last
there is
question,
a hope.
and then we
Go.
can get out of here because we've done like 15 minutes on Warrior. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Why do you think it was canceled?
I think
Just people weren't
Cinemax
watching it.
No, I think Cinemax stopped producing original content.
Oh.
And since they were with Cinemax, they were just like, well, all of our original shows are now done. So they just didn't have a home anymore.
All right. All right. Well, now we can talk about WandaVision and why I was right about something and y'all were wrong.
So let's do it. Let's transition to WandaVision.
Okay,
We've seen
Mike.
episodes 4 and 5 now, so there are spoilers
So
coming.
it's
friends.
really
Turn
taken
it
off, and there will be spoilers here. And this is a small thing, but I did want to bring it up because I was right, as I said. And
Come on, do it.
all three of
Right
you
about
were wrong.
what?
When
your horn and
she
do it.
gets, y'all said when she gets kicked out at the end of episode 3, like they're treating her as a hostile, and they're all pointing guns at her. Y'all were all
They
were wrong
were.
about that shit, and I
They
was
were pointing
right.
guns at her.
No,
They were treating
weren't.
her as a hostile.
No, they weren't. They already knew who she was at that point. But well, we can get into the show. But like, I just need to stand my ground here. That
The individual guards holding those
okay,
guns.
yeah, but it
weren't
was so
sure.
clear that like they were not like, oh, you're a bad person. We're gonna hurt you.
It
was-
wasn't
Oh my
clear.
God. He's gonna make me go make a screenshot of the scene where they're pointing the guns at her. But
Do
that's
it.
fine.
Do it. And
Just give him his cookie. Just give him
we
his
can
oatmeal raisin
publicly
cookie.
beef on our Instagram, and that'll be
All right,
Give
sounds
him an
good.
ookie cookie.
all right. Anyway,
All
go
right,
ahead.
friends.
Really?
So I would like to start off by patting all of you guys, all three of you, patting yourselves on the back or patting you guys on the back. So many correct inferences coming out of episodes 1, 2, and 3 that were really confirmed by episodes 4 and a little bit in episode 5. I don't even
We
want
did
to
it, you
list them
guys.
all. It was just like the idea that Wanda was more in control than we thought originally.
Why don't you or someone give us a synopsis of where we're at?
So, turning point episode 4, we're no longer in the sitcom world. Now we're taking it on from the perspective of the Geraldine character, who wakes up in episode 4 after she comes back from the Great Blip.
Mm-hmm. And that scene was dope.
Thanos's
And that scene
finger
was
snap.
so dope. And I think like
that was really crazy because we've never seen that perspective before.
No.
Of the people coming back and how wild it was.
A little bit in Spider-Man.
But they played it
In
for
the
humor.
school, yeah, but it was
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
one shot.
They played
and-
it a different way.
Yeah, it was not like this is like crazy happening.
Right.
So so that episode 4 just confirmed a lot of things that we talked about on this podcast, which is that Monica Rambeau works for SWORD, which is an organization similar to S.H.I.E.L.D., but I believe with more of a interstellar purview. And so she's come back.
Jurisdiction, maybe, you know.
Jurisdiction, sure, beat, if you will, for any of you in the law enforcement parlance. So she comes back after the blip. She's at SWORD, but because she's been gone so long, and they're not really sure what to do with her, she gets thrown onto an FBI case that nobody else really wants to handle. Some weird anomaly. So she goes out to Westview, New Jersey, which Westview, of course, is the town that WandaVision takes place in. So Rambeau shows up on the scene, and she's greeted by none other than FBI agent Wu, who we know from the Ant-Man series, which is pretty great. And so
What's
that's
the actor's
basically
name?
Randall Park.
Oh, yeah. I like him.
Of Fresh Off the Boat fame. And so that's where we get introduced to the whole anomaly that Wanda has created around Westview, New Jersey. And that investigation leads to Monica getting sucked into the WandaVision world, and then all sorts of government resources, SWORD and probably CIA and whatever, they all descend onto Westview, and they're investigating the abnormal activity. And then they also bring in the astrophysicist, who I only recognize from Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist and Two Broke Girls.
She
And
is.
Thor.
I
think she's
cannot.
actually
Kat
she's
Dennings.
Natalie Portman's
She
buddy.
was the
from
political
first Thor
science
movie, right?
intern from the Thor series, who has now become.
I cannot stand her.
Oh, you hate her. She's
my
great.
God.
What don't you like about
She's
her?
just so irritating. It's such a
I
cliche
enjoy her.
character. It's played in such a cliche way. Like it's just infuriating.
I mean, she's just playing herself.
You're a cliche, bro.
Yeah, which is maybe I am a cliche, and that's fine. So is she.
But he doesn't have to be in movies.
No,
I think
I
is
don't.
what
I
Mike is
don't.
saying.
And I'm not as rich or successful as Kat Dennings is. But the character it's just so annoying. It's just like nerdy, kind of cute girl with bright red lipstick who's like a smart scientist, but nobody takes her seriously. Like, come on, bro. Like, that's really where we're at right now with this. Like, ugh.
What a hater.
The hate.
I kind of like her.
I liked it.
I like the sarcasm.
Me too.
Yeah.
Everybody else is all
Nobody's gonna
serious.
give me a coffee. Oh, and then Randall Park gets her a coffee, and you're just like,
Maybe she reminds you of someone.
it could be myself. My self-loathing has been known to rear its head in such a fashion.
Could you just like put on some red lipstick for a second?
So
Jesus, I
how
hate how
so
you
we're
just
now
said that.
halfway through. Episodes 4 and 5 are done in the bag. We've seen them. As a fan, as a comics enthusiast, Savan, how are you feeling about this show? What have you liked about it? Was there anything that stuck out to you?
Yeah, one, I'm gonna not pat myself on the back on the stuff only because I feel like I read the comics as insider knowledge.
Hey, you did the homework, you know? Like,
Yeah, but you know, it's unfair. I got some unfair pre-info, but I think what I'm loving is, Brian, you said it before, man. This show is bold.
Mhm,
This like the boldness is really paying off, and I'm loving it.
mhm.
I think one thing I'm really appreciating is they do a really good job of Marvel more so than, I think Disney has with Star Wars, but they do a good job of bringing in characters from other bits of Marvel and referencing it to where if you've seen everything, you'll appreciate it, but if you didn't, you're given enough exposition to still know what's happening. So like, even if you hadn't known a lot about, like they gave a super brief blurb of Wanda, so even if you don't know a lot about her past, you get the gist of it if you haven't seen all the Avengers movies and whatnot. But we still get to appreciate, Special Agent Wu just being hilarious, continuing from Ant-Man. I think that attention is something that, as a long-time viewer, I appreciate that. But I think for a new-time viewer, they don't really miss out.
Yeah, and those characters are still like fun and interesting, even if you don't recognize them.
Yeah. What I'm also appreciating briefly is they're just doing a good job of tying this into still the larger Marvel world. They're doing a good job of showing that like these are different programs and shows, but this is still one shared world. Vision is a relatively household name. People know who he is. People know about the Avengers and Thanos and them really threw down. Like the conversation between those two, between Darcy and Special Agent Wu, that basically was them arguing over the ending to Infinity War of Endgame is hilarious.
Yeah.
But it makes sense. And yeah, they do a good job. Yeah, the different tones throughout the show do a good job of giving me a wide mix of feelings, and I appreciate that.
So I think a few things there. With like the bringing in the other stuff, I think that was one of the things people were most worried about with the Disney Plus shows as a whole. Is that can these shows really feel like a part of that Marvel universe? And like that one of the hugest things that's made it successful is that the movies are able to be themselves, but also like integrate into the larger universe in a really great way. And I think you can tell 5 episodes in, like this show feels like it's a part of the Marvel universe, and it's even now taken steps in ways that movies haven't. So like we talked about like showing the people coming back from the blip, like that's so huge in the context of the movies, and they did that in a really awesome way. So that's like for me, that's the content part of it. But it's also like the budget is clearly there. Like I think with the Netflix shows, like they look like the Netflix shows, right? Like there's a distinct look different than the movies and like the way the combat's done and stuff like that. You can tell it's a different budget, a different studio. This straight up, like even the way it's shot and the cameras and things like that, it looks beautiful. Like it's clearly the budget.
Yeah, it's not Agents of
No,
S.H.I.E.L.D.
it's clearly like just it's aligned with it. So that's been
It looks like a movie.
it does look like a movie.
Wanda's effects look the same in the show as they do in the movie. It's consistent.
But it's actually now it's and it works out for them that Black Widow didn't come out because this is now starting the next we've gone the longest we've gone without a Marvel movie since Iron Man 1. So it's cool that now they get this fresh start and this is taking such a huge step forward. So it's good that Black Widow didn't come out in a way because now this is the start of Phase 4. And the hugest thing we need to talk about is now that we've kind of talked about generalities, and we'll assume everyone listening to the show has seen it, knows kind of what it's about. is that at the end of the episode, she brings back her brother, except it isn't her brother from the movies we're familiar with, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson. It's the guy from the Fox X-Men movies. So this is the first step we're getting towards a multiverse, and this leads into the Doctor Strange movie that's called Multiverse of Madness. So it's like,
So it's
that
the Quicksilver that's not wearing the Under Armour. He wears like the goggles.
yeah,
And
it's
he,
the
like,
guy
zips around.
from the X-Men movies, and it's
All
that
right.
character.
famous for that one scene where he's so fast that he's moving around objects and
Yeah.
bullets.
The bullets. He moves
Yeah.
the bullets.
But
That was pretty cool.
that went straight over my head, and I'm really
Me too.
wondering how many
I missed
people. Because I've never seen those movies. I have no interest in those movies.
Come on,
as much
guys.
Yeah,
as I
dude,
know.
Brian, I know, man.
Yeah, I mean, so y'all both picked up on that immediately.
Yeah, I've seen those
So
X-Men
what-
movies.
Yeah.
Brian
I
first, and then Savon. What was your reaction to that?
When I almost knew that Pietro was coming back, right? At some point during that episode, I just felt it. I think they were hinting
Yeah,
at
and they
it.
talked about her reanimating people. and-
They start with sort of like the close up on the back of his head. Okay, cool. And then when we finally got to see his face, I was like, oh snap, it's that kid from the X-Men movies. Like, this is crazy. And then I love the fact that I think Kat Denning says it. She's like, oh my god,
recasted him.
he's been recast.
Yeah.
Which is like such a funny meta thing to say.
Well, did you know it? Did you recognize it wasn't her brother from Age of Ultron?
That X-Men scene with Quicksilver is like pretty memorable.
Right.
Like I remember that was like the scene that killed the movie, and then they had to do it again. And so I knew it was him immediately, and then which got me thinking right away, like, holy shit, like they brought in Fox's X-Men universe into the MCU. Are we finally going to see these two things come together? Are we finally going to see mutants in the MCU? Like, is Magneto gonna come out as the father of Wanda and Pietro? Like, is that what's gonna happen?
Is that is that canon?
In the comics, yeah.
Oh, for
Magneto-
real? I did not know that.
Yeah.
So I'll explain after Brian.
All right.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
So basically, Mike, and kind of building off that, I recognize him because I've seen I actually like a lot of the Fox X-Men movies. I'm an X-Men fan, so I watch them even if some of them aren't great. Yeah, it's a mixed bag, but there's enough to where there's a lot of worth seeing. But yeah, he stole the show with that scene, so they did hint at bringing him back because the kids asked, Mom, do you have a brother? And he's like, yes, I miss him. Sometimes it makes me sad. I'm like, okay, they don't have to keep bringing up the brother if they don't plan on doing something with that. So when they brought him back, I was like, okay, this is surprising. When I saw the new actor, that blew my mind because we talked about this before WandaVision came out, that one of Wanda's key things in the comics is that she's like reality warping levels of powerful. And it felt like the MCU intentionally toned down on that, which I'm okay with because that can lend itself to bad writing a character who's so obnoxiously OP. And I didn't think it translate well.
The Superman problem.
Yeah, it's just like, okay, she
Yeah.
can literally warp reality. Dude, come on. This makes everything trivial, right? So that's what I recognize. That's my thought. I'm like, oh crap. The fact that like the reanimating Vision thing is one thing, but because okay, she's controlling a corpse, but her bringing back someone who she doesn't have access to their body is really her flexing some real power.
But in the episode, she didn't know who it was. She didn't consciously bring him in because they made a point for her to say, "I don't know who's at the door."
Maybe, yeah, and
Right,
and that would
that's
make
true.
sense because that's like a different iteration of the brother, but it still, I think, is hinting at some ridiculousness with her powers. And like, obviously, you said it, Mike, when we texted once, multiverse implied. I'm like, all right, cool. Even if we know those things exist, this could still be tied to Wanda's absurd power, which the show is making it clear. Hey, she could have soloed Thanos. Like they're going
Yeah.
out of their way to establish that Wanda is like has set a precedent of power that we haven't seen before.
So a few follow-up questions to that. One, how much agency and consciousness does Wanda have over all this stuff? And I think the show kind of hints at some things. And two, do we think this is a heel turn for Wanda?
Oh, like she's gonna become a bad guy?
Well, maybe not a bad guy, but sort of like how the X-Men had to deal with Dark Phoenix.
So
Go ahead, Simone.
So
guys
in
are
the
smarter than
comics,
me.
that is who Scarlet Witch. Like that is kind of one of her main story arcs. Like in the comics, it's pretty established that Wanda is not a bad person, but the dangerous nature of her powers, and in the comics, a little degree of like trauma and mental illness makes her still very dangerous and volatile. So I think that's the direction they're taking. And she's not a bad person. Geraldine's going out of her way to establish that she's not evil, but she is troubled and she is still dangerous. And there's
So they're
a
just basing this character on Mike Smith.
I mean, think of think Hulk, right? Think the Incredible Hulk. The Hulk might not be bad at its core, but when it's all said and done, bro, you're dangerous.
You're fighting him.
Like you're dangerous, and
Yeah.
you're a threat to people, and we have to like reconcile that.
So, a side note before we move on, like with the whole Fox thing, because I was reading this great. I think it was on Consequences Sound. If anybody wanted to check it out, they have a great essay. I can't believe I just said essay about a Marvel movie, but someone wrote a great little piece about how this is. And one thing I didn't realize is that regarding like the Fox merger, Deadpool 3 is confirmed to be in the MCU. So now that's like at least two things that we're now starting to see the crossover.
And Spider-Man
and Venom
the
as
next
well.
Spider-Man is supposed to have some tie-ins to the
Venom
yeah,
with Tom
and it looks
Hardy,
like,
right?
and it looks like they are going to bring in the other Spider-Man. A few questions. Like first thing that to answer Brian's question, like with the agency piece, I'm not sure if this is what you were asking, but like it seems pretty unclear, like if like she's just like lost it, or if like there's like does she kind of have free will right now and she's just like made that turn. And I think that's cool. Like they purposely showed her busting into the sword to just seem like, oh, that's a really like premeditated like thing she did.
Yeah.
But
But didn't know who was at the door at the end.
yeah,
Of the
so it's
episode.
kind of like
So-
is she just like kind of losing control over all this? So I just
Which-
just but I mean like where we're at, like this is such a huge thing. What % of people do you think really understood the gravity of that 30-second scene?
Nerds.
Well, I watched
Probably
with,
not a lot.
No.
I watch with my family, and they are definitely not in touch with what happens in the comics and the greater like Marvel
Yeah.
cinematic world and stuff. So they didn't pick up on it, but they still thought the show was pretty cool.
And that's the
Cool.
same thing as Mandalorian, right? It's like, and Savon was saying this earlier, is that you can, if you're a huge fan, there's something for you to get it out of there, and if you're not a huge fan, you can still enjoy it. Why are you shaking your head? Savon?
Because the people who were the outsiders don't feel that way, referring to Wesley and Brian.
What do you mean?
Right.
Yeah,
in
I think I'm a
In
Star
regards
Wars
to the
insider.
Mandalorian. No, I'm saying, but in terms of but I'm saying in regards to like
I'm not saying the
I
show
get
is like the Mandalorian. I'm just saying like my mind's blown now because I understand the context of that. But even before that, I thought the episode was dope.
I guess I think WandaVision's doing it better than Mandalorian is why I made that face. Mandalorian, you could say it was a legit problem. WandaVision had multiple moments of like brief but not shoehorned exposition if you didn't know what happened. If you didn't know about Sokovia, they made it very quickly and clear what Sokovia was. They made it clear that Wanda blew
Okay.
up the people with the
But
incident.
that's a key plot. Yeah, but that's also a key like plot point for that moment. Or I guess it's actually not.
What was it in
mean-
episode 2 or 3 when Geraldine is there and Wanda's about to kick her out? The thing that happened was her mentioning her brother,
Ultron.
right? Saying
Right.
her
Yeah.
name, saying
Yeah.
his name. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Was like, oh, there was like a flip, a switch that flipped for Wanda, and she like freaked out. And so there's something like historically going on there with her and Pietro, even if you didn't see Ultron, which like, or you don't remember Ultron, right? At least you know like, oh, this is like a sore spot for her. So you might not know like, oh, there's a 20th Century Fox whole like thing going on here, but you do know like this character is like meaningful to her,
Yeah.
and you still have more episodes to figure out like for him to play a role. So you're like, oh, okay, like let's see where this guy goes now that she's like talked about him a couple times with like a sense of loss and grief.
I am so curious where this show is gonna go. Like, it's just they've really killed it again. It's the mouse does not miss, fellas. I mean, it's just crazy. Like,
Kevin Feige, man.
Can I put on my tinfoil hat super quick before we move on?
Yeah.
Do
And then
it.
We'll go to Harley.
Yeah. Quick tinfoil hat. This is my theory. Things I picked up on that I'm curious about.
Can we get like intro music for like segment like Savant's tinfoil hat?
All right, look here. Looky here, kids.
I've done some research.
We're doing some homework. No, but real talk. After Geraldine had the testing done, they made it clear that something funky came out about her test results.
I took that as the machine was just screwed up,
Nah, B, I don't.
or
Maybe-
that like I don't think. All right, go ahead. I'm sorry. I know what you're
So
going to say. Go ahead.
so tenfold. So I don't know what it means, but it might mean something. But also, they're making it clear to point out that Wanda's producing radiation or something, and that they're supposed to be clearly they're unsure of what the effect is. Like when they sent that secret message in the message, it said, danger unknown or effect on residents unknown. They keep pointing out microwaves, energy. What is the effect of this radiation? I feel like they're gonna go somewhere with that. They also established that Wanda clearly rewrites the nature of how things work, like when she turned the vest into like the 70s clothes. We have Quicksilver in now from Fox, so just from a super, just like, Mike, there's a reason why the MCU doesn't use the word mutant. That's a part of the Fox rights thing.
Not
And-
anymore, but yeah.
Yeah, but, at first that's why, they retcon, in the comics, Wanda and Pietro are they're literally Magneto's mutant kids. That's just it. There's none of this Infinity Stone power stuff. So clearly now that we got Quicksilver in, like, I think they're opening the door to give us mutants. Like,
Is she gonna create the mutants, or are they just gonna come from
And
another
the irony
universe?
of that, and when we talked about this show when it was just a teaser, like, which is kind of crazy we've been doing this so long, but you told us about the House of M storyline, and that's where she gets rid of mutants, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this
Yeah.
would be the opposite.
This would be a fun twist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So exactly. So it ties to that theme of like she's clearly like Wanda plays a major role in the mutant stories, good or bad in the comics, depending on how you look at it. So it wouldn't be out of the question. And they're bringing in this version of Quicksilver who is a mutant. They made it clear also when they talked about Wanda and Pietro's backstory, Magneto is not their parent in the MCU. It is a different version.
Right. They're
So-
Mind Stone created.
Yeah, they're a Mind Stone created. So bringing in alternative timeline versions of them is another way to kind of put a foothold. Either way, I think we're getting mutants, bruh.
So what's exciting, and this can be the last thing, is that they've confirmed this directly leads into the Doctor Strange movie. So like I don't think we're gonna get resolution in this show, but this will definitely be the first time where it's a really great show that's almost like an event leading into a movie. Like kind of like Pokemon did way back when. Things like that. So I mean, like that's pretty.
I don't understand that reference.
You don't
What
remember,
does that mean?
they had like the movie came out, and like at Burger King, you can get like the gold Pokemon cards.
Yeah, but that didn't have nothing to do with the show, bruh. That was just Pokemon in the first movie.
It did have to do with the show. Anyway, point
All
is,
right. Can I just give my
Yeah,
one last
yeah,
hypothesis for what's
yeah.
gonna happen? My grand theory. Episode 5 was the 80s and took place in a family ties setting. Episode 6 will be the 90s in a Full House setting, and the Olsen twins will make an appearance. Because this show's got a thing about twins. So there you have it, folks.
So like
you heard it here first.
Is
that
she an
makes sense.
Olsen twin?
Have you seen? She is. She's not
No,
a twin.
she's a
She's
sibling.
younger
a sister
than-
of the Olsen twins.
Yeah, they
Mary
look
Kate and
terrible,
Ashley?
bro. I don't know if you've seen
Yes.
them recently. Like, it would be jarring if they. Yeah, she's their younger sister. Did you
They
not know
better
that?
show
Savon?
up as coked out
It's such a
40-year-olds.
shame we don't have video in our show because like Savon's reaction there was he was just genuinely shocked. Like,
Wait, you had no idea they were related?
she looks.
Dude, I
like
thought
them.
Mary Kate and Ashley were 3 people until like 10 years ago.
Yeah,
They're
she
two
is.
people.
Oh, that would be the biggest twist. There's a third one.
But yeah, Elizabeth Olsen, like, I don't know how successful the other ones have been, but like, she's a main part of the Marvel universe. So screw you, Full House.
Interesting. All right. So Full House. Are we going to see John Stamos make an appearance or Dave?
I feel
Oh my
like
God.
that would
They're gonna
be-
plug some yogurt,
Dave
some-
Coulier.
some Hydra yogurt. Cut it out.
Okay.
All right, we're not getting into
Huh,
Harley
okay.
Quinn.
All right. Harley Quinn. We started talking about this last time a little bit on the show. So, listeners, you should be a little bit familiar. Hopefully you had a chance to check out a few episodes. What a crazy, fantastic animated effort here. It's available on HBO Max. I don't know how we've never heard of it. Like you said, it was not marketed. It's super adult rated. I mean, everybody is getting eaten alive by a shark or bashed their brains in with a bat or an axe or a hatchet or whatever.
And the
Throwing in
language.
acid.
Yeah.
The language is quite R-rated.
No genitalia though.
No genitalia.
No,
They
There
talk
hasn't
about
been.
it.
no, there's no.
They talk
there's no
about it.
nudity.
Only
they do
verbal
bleep
genitalia.
bleep out a derogative term or a derogatory word aimed at women. But I just want to throw it out there. This show was amazing. I've seen both episodes. I think you guys are somewhere in season 1 still for the most part. But what should our listeners like? Why should our listeners watch this show?
So my buddy Trent got his wisdom teeth taken out, and he's a pretty soft boy. So he was out of
Condolences to
So
Trent.
he was
Trent, I hope you're eating lots of ice cream and feeling
Trent
better,
will
man.
never listen to this podcast. Love him to death.
In my
but
mind, he looks like the Michelin.
no,
Man now.
he's tall. He's a good looking boy. He's a tall Baton Rouge corn fed boy. But he'll never listen to this. But anyway, so he got his wisdom teeth taken out and was like all messed up on his Viking and whatever. And he was like, "Oh, I'm trying to find." So I started watching like Justice League and turned it off. And I was like, "Boy, do I have a show for you!" And I told him about this show, and it's the perfect show for when you're just totally zonked out. It is not for me. Like it's like such a solid like 7.5 of a show. It's not It's not like groundbreaking, but it's like it's so funny. It's like so aligned with a lot of other shows like Big Mouth and kind of like Archer and like that kind of animated. But if you really like DC, and like I'm not a big DC person, it's just like really clever, and like it's almost nostalgic in the way they chose to like have these characters be based off of. So like obviously they're new kind of ideas for the characters, but like the first suit Harley wears is the old one from the Mark Hamill Joker and that kind of stuff. So
Batman the animated series.
like it's almost feels like
My
it's two
childhood.
completely different parts. It's like the DC part of the show, and then it's like the comedy writing part of the show. And I just think like the jokes are so funny. It's like done so well. And the last thing I'll say about it is the voice actors. It's unbelievable. I don't know how they got all these. Maybe they spent all their budget on cast rather than marketing, because I'd never heard of the show. But it has like some of the funniest people like doing comedy. It's Wanda Sykes, JB Smoove, Jason Alexander from Seinfeld. Like I don't even know.
Tisha
other names.
Campbell.
Yeah, it's unreal.
Giancarlo
Yeah,
Esposito.
Yes.
they have Alfred Molina. They have like Tevye from Fiddler on the Roof. Like that's a legit actor, and he's playing like Mr. Freeze, who dies in like a stupid ass way. It's just it's so well done. The production quality is so high, and nobody knows about
Right.
this show. It's I'm almost convinced it doesn't exist.
Are you kidding me? They did Romeo and Juliet. What do you mean a dumbass way? That's like a classic. Like
Yeah, that was a
set
good
up
moment,
way
Romeo
bro.
to
and Juliet
die.
is they both die.
Yeah, but you had to have a little bit of happy ending.
You
it's-
cold bastard.
He doesn't teach English, folks.
Savon, what do you think?
So I'm someone who's not a big DC fan in terms of their movies. I think DC has always been the top-notch bar when it comes to animated content. Batman the animated series, Justice League Unlimited, Young Justice,
Batman Beyond.
Batman Beyond, then their animated movies. I think they have pretty
Teen
much
Titans?
yeah, which honestly was its own style, but even that, yeah, like they do a great job with their animated properties, and they do lots of styles and tones, and the writing is always top notch.
Thank you, Paul Dini.
I didn't expect and keep in mind, I wasn't interested in this show because I don't like how they do Harley Quinn in the movies, and this was just completely different. Even though they borrowed the design, I love the show. They borrow some of the designs from the
Ooh.
animated series to kind of draw people in. So you see, like the old 90s version of Two-Face and all this, but they still take the fact that they blend the most well-known aspects of characters into these like hybrids, and the way it's done humor-wise is hysterical. Like the 90s Bane with the Tom Hardy voice, but then they make him the whipping boy is just
It's
like hilarious to
so
watch.
good.
Or like Aquaman being dramatic and still a joke, but also still like a badass who'll whip everybody. Like the balance of comedy, I really didn't expect the writing to be as funny as it was.
But what separates this cartoon for me is not that it shows violence and gore and blood all the time, but that almost every character, even Harley Quinn, has a crazy intellectual depth that none of the other animated series have shown.
Well, you can do that through humor in an easier way, I think, because you don't need to get people as like invested into these characters in a deep, meaningful, like brooding way. It's just like it's funny, and the short episodes and they're like really tight, contained stories a lot of the time. So they're able to like build that character development. For me, like story isn't. I know like Savon, you really like it, and I think some of you other dudes really like the story. That's not really what like stands out to me. Like I enjoy like the character development over time, but it's not like for me like a zoned in focus show. But like for me, it's just that the consistent jokes are so good, almost in like an old school like Family Guy kind of way, where it's like it's not really connected to things, but like they do like political jokes and like kind of like social commentary kind of things that have nothing to do with DC. Like the whole
a ton of social commentary.
yeah, and it's
the whole thing.
so clever. And,
They said
and it's
Roger Goodell's part
Yeah,
of the Legion.
yeah,
which
and
is
it's so-
hilarious.
but like even not like that, like Harley
So
being
all
Ju-
Saints fans
Harley
are now
being-
right on board.
Yeah, true. Well, I think everyone in the NFL hates Roger Goodell. But it's like so for some reason like Judaism is it's like such a Jewy show, and like I keep saying that and people are so aghast, but like a Jewy comedy is such a thing, and like everybody knows what that damn well means. So it's like there's a whole bit about a bar mitzvah, and then when Harley goes home and like her very Jewish parents, like she literally said like, and I don't know if anybody got, but like my favorite thing was like, and because you just had to spend all your time with that fakakta clown. And I was just like, oh my God.
Not a joke that lands with
No.
me, but
No,
No.
nobody would get
Yeah.
that. But it's
Yeah.
just like such a thing that it's
Mhm.
made so much sense at the time there.
I love that it's really like such a palate cleanser to the rest
Yeah.
of
Mhm.
DC's take on superheroes.
Mhm.
Honestly,
And-
to everything. Like, I just feel like everything that comes out now is like a dark murder mystery or like some kind of drama. And it's been so nice to just have like a comedy that is like actually clever and is like an enjoyable thing to watch that isn't like a super huge deal.
Yeah, it's a real fun ride, and I just love the way that they twist all these characters that you're familiar with, into like some sort of farce, but you still care about them, right? So like,
yeah.
I mean, like Poison Ivy
Yeah.
is like a social justice warrior, which is pretty hilarious. Clayface,
Clayface is
who
so
I
good.
love from Batman the Animated Series. Like, yeah, just like the worst ham of an actor ever.
But he's so committed to the bit that you can't help
Yeah.
but like love his
exactly he's lovable.
yeah.
And they established that he's super OP when he's committed, but half the joke is that like, yeah, but he's an actor first and a criminal second.
I've found
Yeah.
they've also been able to pull off cliches in really entertaining ways. Like,
Oh, for
like
sure.
when they go to college and Clayface like becomes a sorority girl and then gets way too into it and is obsessed with the guy. Like that like seemed like such a cliche, but it was so funny. And then it's just like I feel like sometimes where shows miss like that is that like they just have to like pick up these like storylines and drop them immediately. And I guess that's probably inherent with like the shorter 20-minute episode kind of things. But and maybe I'm contradicting my earlier point. I guess having like an underlying story enables them to do that. Like the the college thing is just like one nice little story. You have that whole Clayface thing, and then almost at the end of every episode, they're like, yeah, whatever, that was kind of dumb. Let's move on. and it's like you're cool with that because it's like there is that underlying story. So maybe that's what kind of brings it to the next level and stops it from being like Family Guy, where it's just like nonsense every episode that's wrapped up at the end, where it's like they can do like cutaway jokes and things like that, but it's all kind of built on an actually like foundation that you're interested in. And like Brian was saying, like you do care about the characters. So I guess they've kind of found a sweet spot where it's just like political jokes, social jokes, and then it is also like a superhero or supervillain story.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's still that underlying superhero plot line, and I think for me that kind of is what has kept me coming back for more.
Well,
like
like, in
I'm
season
more
one-
down to like keep watching episode after
Yeah.
episode because of that.
Well, yeah, I mean, what you're saying though is in season one, it's not necessarily like a story of like superhero like story, right? I mean, her arc, Harley's arc and struggle through the first show, and they establish it really early on, is her self-acceptance versus needing external acceptance, right? And so all of those things that happen, all of those episodes, so going to college, going to the bar mitzvah, taking on the Legion of Doom, all of that is in service of Harley trying to figure out who she is as an individual rather than as Joker's love interest, right? And so for me, I think that's what made it cool, right? Is not that like, oh, it was all about this story of like her saving the world. It was actually her story about saving herself, building a family around her that actually she could trust, right? And so those are universal themes that they deal with in a subtle way. It's not like, oh, it's like, I mean, they obviously do it in a ham-fisted way as well, but I think, like you said, right, there's that balance of like, there's comedy thrown in, there's all these things, but it's still done in like a respectful, mature way that I think it really like balances itself so well that I don't know how they did it. I mean, it's just a marvel that they were able to do that without going too far in any one direction. And like, you can enjoy all parts of it all at the same time.
I think kind of off of that, she's never like just fighting the villain of the episode. You know, it's never like, oh, I'm fighting the Joker because he's the Joker. I need to fight him. It's always like, oh, I'm fighting this character because he's really sexist, and now I'm trying to like overcome like the glass ceiling. And the Justice League are just like a vehicle as a part of that, you know? So it's like, I think that is also why they were able to build investment in the characters so quickly, because it's human issues. It's not just like Batman fighting whoever the villain is.
To take over the world.
Yeah, or something like that. It's just like she's dealing with something, and then like the world feels really organic and I guess lived in, what you would say. Like the characters all have a space there. So it's just like, it's issues people I think can identify with. So I think that's also been a big part of it, is that...
I have one follow-up question. Sorry, Mike.
No,
I have one follow-up question for the comic book readers in our group. Do you guys know if any of these like character changes or character like twists, like you called them, are reflected in comics at all? So, or is this just something they totally did off on their own just to make this show as like a comedy?
I don't get which part do you mean.
So like having Clayface be this thespian actor who's, you know, crazy, or having Psycho actually just be like a Napoleon complex guy who's a misogynist, or having Ivy actually not be a villain set on like revenge or takeover, but actually just be about like, hey, I want to make the world better, and I may be doing it in this particular way.
No, I think that's pretty consistent with a lot of their like actual comic book interpretations. Like the joke is that, you know, Ivy's a villain because she's an antagonist in the comics, but like the joke, I mean, even if you saw like those really crappy 90s Batman movies, her plan really is just like, jokes aside, she really does. She says, oh, I identify as an eco-terrorist. I'm like, yeah, it's hilarious, but truth to be told, she really is just but she really is an eco-terrorist more than anything else. I think the show just kind of really emphasizes that, because it's easy to not really play that up in the show, where in any other content where, you know, hey, she's the bad guy with plant powers. But
do they show the villains, because obviously the show focuses all on villains, do they show the villains caring about other people in the way they do in this show?
So it's like, it's a mixed bag. Some of it is like the way they pull the characters together is definitely unique to the show, because some of these characters like Dr. Psycho and King Shark are a bit more niche and less known, which is why they use them. But I think
where's King Shark from, by the way?
I called him Sharkman, and Mike was not happy about it.
I want to say King Shark was a Flash villain, but again, he's really niche.
Yikes.
Like he's very He's very, very niche.
DC's got to work on their Rose Gallery.
Yeah, and I think at some point they like rebooted him, and he's a more interesting character. But Dr. Psycho being a Wonder Woman nemesis who's a misogynist, all that's true. And like Clayface being a bad actor, I think there's an element of that being, some of that is from his actual comic like story. So they definitely drew. Oh, and like the whole bit with no, that might be a spoiler. Never mind. But there's other stuff that happens throughout Harley Quinn that's definitely inspired from comic book storylines, like her breaking up with the Joker. Even now, right? They're clearly making Harley Quinn a character who isn't just the Joker sidekick, even with Suicide Squad, Birds of Prey. So it's
what I do love is that Joker keeps waving like Harley Quinn's old costume at her and how she used to behave as the Joker's sidekick when she was introduced in the animated series, and how like coming at it with like a 2020 or 2021 perspective, they're like, damn, like she was just like this like nothing of a sidekick, just subservient woman, and always just squeaking about and stuff, and really had no point. But now like this show is acknowledging like, oh, this can be a real person, a real character, and we can sort of just like leave all of that behind in the 90s and laugh at it. Which
And it's the
which I
same
think is
creator,
a
so
clever
really
twist.
they're critiquing their own creation, right?
Right.
And their
Yeah,
way
yeah.
that they did that 15, 20 years ago.
The character parodies are just so. I just love how they parody the superheroes and how they keep them in character but hilarious.
Yeah.
Like the show isn't about Batman, and and I'm glad that they don't give him too much emphasis. But God, they make the most of his screen time. Like they make it so just campy, and they just play up everything you know about the character. But he's still it's like, yeah, this is Batman. Same with Joker. Same with the villains. To me, that just consistently, like Mike, you kind of hinted at it. It feels like a Venture Brothers, Archer. Like the writing is that of an adult comedy, but the set piece is a superhero world. But the good part, I think, is that most of this really good writing could probably work even if it wasn't set in like the DC world. But damn, do they adapt the DC world to make the jokes just amplify to a new level. Like I told you, like watching the Bane, Penguin, Two-Face interactions of just the cheesy Batman Rogues Gallery is just hilarious because
the leather chair bit.
Yeah, it's just there's a bunch of that stuff. It's silly, but they make it work. So I'm glad I had a show to make me laugh.
I thought of it as Archer meets The Tick. Did you guys watch The Tick?
I heard of it, never watched it.
Is that the surgery one? Oh no, that's the Nick.
No, The Tick was that guy in the
like
blue
another
superhero.
90s superhero cartoon. Yeah, big blue superhero, and in that they're also doing parodies of all these DC characters for the most part.
It's a little beyond my time. I heard of it, never watched it.
So Mike gave it a 7.5. I really think that's too low.
Thanks.
I'm like, I loved it.
That's
so
a
I don't
score.
give A's.
Mike's a tough critic. Mike
That's
isn't
a
impressed
good
easily.
score.
Wait, what are on the ends of the scale for you? What's a 10 and what's a 0?
Nothing's a 10 because nothing's perfect. That's my.
I think
I'm kinda like that too.
Breaking Bad might be a 10. Wes's favorite show, Breaking Bad.
It's an easy
like
answer.
Breaking
Mike.
Bad, Sopranos are up there, that kind of stuff.
That's such an easy answer. Just,
Oh yeah, well, there's not a lot of things that are up
all
there.
the most popular shows of all time are the
yeah,
only
because
tens.
they're really good.
So there's
it's
no
hard to get
diamonds in the
that.
rough in your mind, Mike.
That are like
There's no, like,
But
10
that
out of
doesn't
10
mean
show.
they're a 10. I'm with Mike. You got to work to earn that 10.
The 10 is really hard. John Wilson, honestly, I think.
Oh my god.
I think at least a
Wow.
9.
All right.
I think, and then I don't think people. Anyway, 7.5 is a great score. That's
No,
a
it's
No,
great
it's not.
score.
Who goes home and says, "Ma, I got a 7.5 out of 10."
Yeah, well, it's
No.
easier to get a 10 in on your like science quiz than it is in the show. All right, but then what do y'all give it?
No, I'm
These are
closer.
like a
I'm
solid
closer
8.
to 10, like 9. Like
I
I
give it like
can't
an 8.5.
imagine enjoying. Well, I can't imagine enjoying a show like that any more than I did. Like it just felt so great. The writing was good. Like yeah, it wasn't perfect, but like I really can't imagine enjoying a show more than I enjoyed watching those episodes. So it's
I was
pretty high up there.
thoroughly entertained, and it's hard for me to watch an entire series and say, "Man, I was just top to bottom entertained."
Yes. And it wasn't because it was entertaining just because like explosions. It was entertaining because it was well written. Like you said, the comedy was up there. Just the choices they made.
I was engaged.
Yeah.
All right, 7.75.
Get
I
out,
gave it an
dude.
8. So how do I get flack and he's only 0.5 above me and then not a peep?
Because an 8
Not
and a
a
7 is
peep.
two completely different ranges.
I said first of all, it was 7.5.
That's the
All right,
You
I'll
rounded
go up to
down.
7
Trick.
3/4.
Nah, stick with your
It's just
trash
like,
7.5.
No, I'm like, look, the ceiling is kind of low for that.
The ceiling is.
Oh, so you all right? So you're already just putting glass ceilings on the show ahead of time. I
Oh,
feel you, pimp.
That's a good
Ooh, meta.
term.
Booyakasha!
Hey, so where did the show even come
That's
from?
my like.
Like-
Nobody does it exist.
I
Like,
don't know.
does
It
this
can't-
show
no,
even
Like
Real talk.
no one,
Nobody
I have not
knows
seen
about
anything
it.
written
They've
about
done
this.
2
Yeah.
seasons. Like all these famous people are in it. Like
It
is
was off the Suicide Squad. How it was off that hype. DC had a lot of stuff coming out. They had Suicide Squad. They had Harley Quinn. She was popping off. They had the Birds of Prey movie, so they were really pushing content.
But did this come out like last year, or did this come out 4 years ago?
Well, there's 2 seasons.
2 seasons, the most recent season, so like 2 years ago at the longest. But even then, it was still in production probably before then, so I'm assuming there's still a similar timeline. Plus, they used the recent design from this new redesign with the baseball bat and the
Yeah. and
that's
the-
from
the
that's a new
doctor.
design. So I feel like that was all one push, but maybe because the movies were not good or not well received,
That's one way of putting
they
it.
didn't
That
give
was nice of you.
yeah, but they didn't give the show the attention it deserved. Turns out the show had enough creative liberty to be something dope.
This is like when the record label shelves an album and then it comes out like decades later or whatever, and you're like, damn, that's a good album.
I think they just pushed a lot of Harley Quinn content. I think the big stuff flopped, so they de-emphasized this.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, they're like rebooting some things and not rebooting others, and I guess like in the chaos, like, you know, with the Justice League and all that, like I can see why this would fall between the cracks. But like, I feel like
They
it'd be
should
so
not have.
easy to make a trailer for this that like would get people into it. You know, like you just show her murdering somebody and like bleep stuff out, and it's like, oh, I'm interested in that.
Yeah, but I saw trailers for this, and for me,
You did? Where did you see? Where?
I don't know, the internet life. I
Like-
knew the show existed to some extent.
In your dreams?
No, I knew the show. I didn't see a bunch of stuff. I knew the show existed, but also I had no interest in seeing it because if it was anything, I just saw the design of Harley from Suicide Squad, Birds of Prey, and I knew I didn't want to see that. So, like, okay, well, if
Okay.
that's what I'm getting, I'm not about to watch this. I only watched it
That's
because
the
y'all
first
said we should
question
watch
you
it.
asked, right? That's the first
Yeah.
question you asked.
I
us.
saw I had a negative brand association and didn't want to watch the show. I didn't watch it
Okay.
till people told me it was good, and I watched it.
Yeah, true for me too.
Hmm.
If they had shown me that Clayface was in it and doing that kind of shit, I definitely would have watched.
All right, well, let's wrap up our show there. Another classic, guys.
Facts.
It was probably our best show yet. I think I might say that for every show we do.
It's because we're on an
Uh,
upward trajectory.
Hey, lucky episode number 13. We couldn't keep ourselves on track at all. It was amazing. Hit us up on our socials at confidently_pod on Twitter and Instagram. Leave us some comments, respond, tell us what you thought about Harley Quinn. If you've seen it, if you haven't, go watch it. Same with WandaVision. Visit our sponsor, comfy.com. And
We're gonna get like
you
a
know.
cease and desist.
We heard you're wearing our comfies without underwear.
hey, chill out with that, V.
All right, let's wrap it up there, guys. We'll come back in 2 weeks and, hopefully have some more WandaVision stuff. Maybe we'll talk about some more Marvel top 5. But yeah, it's been a good one. Have a good one, y'all.
Confidently wrong.
Laters.
We out.
Bye. Let's get it. Hello and welcome to episode 13 of Confidently Wrong. I'm Wesley Nakamura. With me, as always, is Brian Redondo, Mike Smith, and Savan Jones, aka Captain Vani. Hello, everybody. How are you guys doing?
You know, living the dream.
All right.
What up? What up?
That was a flat start to the show.
Yeah, you want to take it from the top there?
We're good.
Yeah.
I got the energy.
What? You just held it all in?
There was no energy.
Yeah.
All right, you ready?
Yeah.